I'm remarrying a 23-year-old wealthy man's daughter. Get the hell out of here. You on welfare. Just 3 days after we separated, I met Greg. Next to him stood a young, beautiful woman. She entwined her arm with Greg's and seemed wary of me. However, I recognized her. Have we met somewhere before? Or am I mistaken? While Greg hurled harsh words at me, I desperately tried to recall who this woman was. Then it hit me. Could it be? I remembered how I first came to know this woman and her true identity. At the same time, I couldn't help but burst into laughter. Hey, what are you laughing at? It's creepy. Sorry, it's just because this woman is that person. My name is Ashley Morris. I'm 32 and single. I've been working as a nursery school teacher, which has been my dream since I was a student. There are tough aspects like pressure from my boss and dealing with parents, but I'm healed every day by the children's smiles as I work hard. Above all, I've always admired nursery school teachers. I can't quit easily. My workplace might change, but I plan to continue as a nursery teacher until retirement. That's what I thought. However, life doesn't always go as planned. One day, at a mixer invited by a friend, I met a man 3 years my senior, Greg. He seems to be an executive at a well-known company around here. He achieved good results and became an executive in his 20s. I guess that's what they call an elite. However, far from bragging about his career, he was a very humble man. Wow, an executive in your 20s? That's amazing. Not really. There were quite a few others besides me. Still, it's impressive to the outside world. Greg and I happened to sit next to each other, and we hit it off as if we weren't strangers. We exchanged contact information and started meeting. After a few dates, our relationship developed. After 3 years of dating, we got married. Greg was very kind to me even while we were dating. He would plan our dates and give me wonderful gifts, not only on special days. Thank you, Greg. I just want to see Ashley happy. He would come up with such cheesy lines, and I was thrilled. I felt fortunate to have met such a wonderful person. However, at that time, I didn't yet know Greg's true nature. After getting married, my life changed dramatically. It began when Greg told me to quit being a nursery school teacher. Why? I intended to continue working even after getting married. Greg had agreed to that. Please. My mom also said it would be better that way. Your mother has nothing to do with our lives, right? She does, doesn't she? Mom said she would support our lives. Why do you want to work so much? You can live on my income alone. I'm not denying that. Indeed, we could live on Greg's income alone, but I was reluctant to quit being a nursery school teacher. After discussing it, I relented. In fact, we had discussed wanting children in the future, and we concluded that it would be more reassuring to have me at home to start a family. It seems that my mother-in-law had suggested the same, and I reluctantly decided to quit my job. After quitting, at Greg's request, we moved close to his parents' home. According to Greg, it would be easier to receive support if our houses were close. It's at least better than living together. That's what I thought, and I accepted the move. I regretted not discussing our married life while we were dating, but that's a secret. If my mother-in-law had a good personality, I would have gladly accepted it. However, her character was far from good. She looked down on me and scrutinized me with judging eyes. I just couldn't accept that. But once Greg and I started living together, I hoped the chances of meeting my mother-in-law would decrease. That was a big misunderstanding. In fact, since we moved close by, my mother-in-law started coming to our house daily. My father-in-law had already passed away, and perhaps she disliked being alone at home. "Excuse me, Ashley. What is this frozen food packaging doing here?" Every time she visited, my mother-in-law would thoroughly check every corner of the house, even peeking into the trash can. "Hey, not there too. You're not letting my son eat lunches filled with frozen food, are you?" I do use some frozen food, but not for everything. As a housewife, shouldn't you be making every lunch from scratch? Are you planning to feed our future children frozen food too? Ah, I can't believe I have such an unimaginable daughter-in-law. I'm sorry. Should a housewife not use frozen food? Certainly, I had chosen the path of a full-time housewife. However, it wasn't something I had desired myself. After my mother-in-law had her say and left our house satisfied. Sigh. All I could do was sigh. Day after day, my mother-in-law would come to the house, complain, and leave. There were even times when she came while I was out and told me off. "Where are you? I came all this way, so hurry up and let me in the houses." She seemed to enjoy tormenting me and used it as a way to relieve her stress. Although I had refused before, getting told off every time was exhausting. Eventually, I became cautious even when going to the nearby convenience store. However, my mother-in-law continuously repeated one particular phrase. "When will you have children?" She pressured me every time we met. "We still can't have them." "What? Are you kidding me? You're infertile, aren't you?" Such tactless remarks were typical of her. As far as my mother-in-law was concerned, the inability to have children was all my fault. Greg was definitely not to blame. However, Greg himself was kind to me. He seemed to think that pregnancy was something we should work on as a couple, and he often cared about my health. "Don't rush with the kids. Sure, I want to give mom a grandchild, but you're more important to me. Right?" "Right. Thank you." I thought that if we worked together as a couple, we would eventually be blessed with children. However, my hopes never reached fruition. 2 years later, we still hadn't had any children. At that time, my mother-in-law seemed to have given up on having grandchildren and stopped visiting our houses. At the same time, Greg's attitude towards me worsened, and he began to verbally abuse me casually. Perhaps it was the stress of not being able to have children, or maybe he just grew to dislike me. The more I thought about it, the darker my thoughts became. But Greg didn't seem to care about how I felt. "Hey, the food. Why isn't it ready yet?" "Ah, sorry. It'll be ready soon." Ugh, really useless. Can't even cook, can't clean, can't get pregnant. Mom was disgusted. "Why did I even marry someone like you?" Sorry. I no longer had the energy to fight back, and I just kept apologizing to Greg. Seeing me like this, Greg became even more abusive. He would complain about the food being bad, the cleaning not being thorough. I could even get yelled at for a single strand of hair being out of place. And after hurling abuse at me, he would always say, "That's why you can't get pregnant." I was careful about my diet and health management. I took my temperature, managed my menstrual cycle, and was more cautious than when we first got married. But still, I didn't become pregnant. Initially, it was Greg who refused. I understood he was busy or tired from work. But if he was going to complain about not having children, shouldn't he be cooperating? If you're going to say that, then help out. This isn't something I can handle alone. Ugh, shut up. Haven't I told you I'm tired? No matter how I tried to reason with him, Greg would only say he was tired and showed no signs of willingness to cooperate. If Greg wasn't going to help, there was nothing I could do. Whenever I had a moment to myself, I would wonder how things had come to this. Was this the married life I had envisioned? I vaguely thought that our relationship, which had completely cooled, might never return to how it was before. 6 months later, our relationship had cooled even further. Eventually, Greg stopped coming home altogether. He claimed it was due to sudden overtime or drinking parties. He said he had work on holidays too, so he spent very little time at home. I figured he must have given up on me and was probably cheating. If only he would just say he wanted a divorce. In the end, I had no choice but to live a lonely life at home by myself. Greg occasionally came home, but he continued to spew verbal abuse at me. "Why do you always look so miserable? It's disgusting." Sorry. Where had the Greg I married gone? The Greg from those days wasn't someone who would call people disgusting. All I could do was apologize, trying not to upset him further. However, one day, after finishing shopping for dinner and returning home, Greg was there unusually. "Oh, what's up?" "Ah, Ashley. Finally back, huh?" Greg spoke cheerfully. What was he planning? I braced myself and waited for his words when he suddenly handed me a piece of paper. It was a divorce paper. Huh, a divorce. Yeah, I don't need you anymore. There's no point in us being married. Go ahead, become homeless, or get on welfare. So, that's how it is. Alongside the sadness of being clearly told I was no longer needed, I felt a sense of relief that I could finally escape this life. I understand. I accepted the divorce without hesitation. Perhaps because I accepted it so quickly, Greg seemed slightly surprised. I signed the divorce papers and handed them to Greg. At that moment, I felt like I was released from everything and let out a big sigh. Greg told me to get out by the next day, so I went back to my room and packed the essentials. The next day, while Greg was at work, I left the houses and headed to my parents' houses. I had contacted my parents, but they seemed worried now that I was actually coming home. "You can stay at home as long as you need. There's no rush." Encouraged by my mother's words, I decided to face tomorrow with renewed effort. 3 days after the divorce, my heart was still healing, but I knew I had to move forward. I needed to find a job, so I looked through magazines and online for job listings. Perhaps due to labor shortages, there were many openings for nursery school teachers. Maybe I should become a nursery teacher again. I saved a few listings that caught my interest. Looking at the clock, it was past 4 p.m. I had been looking at listings for an hour. I decided to go outside for a change of pace. I didn't have any particular errand, I just wanted to take a walk. I reminisced about walking this path to school or working as a part-timer at this grocery store. However, just as I was about to head home after wandering around for about 30 minutes, I saw a familiar figure. Greg? What? Ashley. In front of me stood Greg, and next to him was an unfamiliar woman, much younger and more beautiful than either Greg or me. The woman intertwined her arm with Greg's and looked at me warily. Why are you here? That's my line. Why are you here? Shut up. It's none of your business. Greg did not want to answer my question. Hey, Greg, who is this woman? Oh, she's my ex-wife. Don't worry about her, Vanessa. Ex-wife? The woman, referred to as Vanessa, was acting flirtatiously, though it only made her seem more like a bimbo. Yet, I felt another emotion upon seeing Vanessa. She seemed familiar. Had we ever met before? Who is she? My current wife. Mom introduced us. What? Wife? That's right. Just 3 days after our divorce, and he's already remarried. My mind went blank. To add insult to injury, Vanessa revealed a shocking fact. We're going to have a baby in a few months. A baby? Considering the size of Vanessa's belly, she seemed to have been pregnant for more than half a year. That time frame overlaps with when Greg stopped coming home. Had they been connected since then? Anyway, Greg looked at Vanessa's face and once again forced reality upon me. I'm remarrying a 23-year-old wealthy man's daughter. Get the hell out of here, you on welfare. Greg said this and burst into a dirty laugh, which Vanessa joined with a high-pitched giggle. That's not. I'm not on welfare. Shut up. Stop pretending. Then Greg and Vanessa burst into laughter again. I felt miserable and was about to cry. However, as I glanced at Vanessa's face, I realized something. The déjà vu I had been feeling since earlier, and the fact that Vanessa was a wealthy man's daughter. Everything connected. At the same time, my tears receded and laughter welled up inside me. Ha ha. My sudden laughter made them step back a bit. Why is she laughing? Gross. Can't handle this. Shall we go? Disgusted by me, the two of them quickly left the scene. The reason I laughed at Vanessa was that I knew her real identity. Indeed, Vanessa is a wealthy man's daughter. However, it's not a successful wealth. In fact, her parents' company, which they managed, was on the brink of bankruptcy. A little while ago, when I was reading job sites and magazines, Vanessa was introduced as a wealthy man's daughter with a photo. It's rare for a wealthy family to introduce their daughter like that, which is why it stuck in my memory. When I later researched the company owned by the wealthy family, various bulletin boards and review sites mentioned it was close to bankruptcy, and indeed, it seemed to be in quite precarious management. Bankruptcy seemed imminent. It was that much of a troubled company. Maybe this could work. Seeing Greg happy, and the fact that his mother introduced Vanessa. Watching all this, something inside me crumbled. I was determined to teach them a lesson with my own hands. They might be happy now, but I'll definitely plunge them into the depths of misery. The first thing I did to bring them down was to offer them a direct apology. A few days after meeting Greg again, I contacted Greg, apologized for laughing, and expressed my desire to give them a baby shower gift. Initially cautious, Greg accepted my request once he saw I was remorseful. However, this was merely a part of my strategy. I wanted to claim damages from Greg and Vanessa through a lawyer, but I had no solid evidence. So, pretending to be remorseful, I called them out to let them spill everything about how they met and the baby, recording everything to submit to the lawyer. A week later, I was at a cafe near my parents' home. Greg and Vanessa arrived about 10 minutes past our meeting time. Sorry. They sat down in front of me without any remorse, still arm in arm, flaunting their affection. Sorry for calling you out suddenly. I was thinking about how rude I was last time we met. I wanted to apologize. Also, isn't your child due soon? I was wondering if I could give you a baby shower gift. Really? Wow, you're so thoughtful. Greg and Vanessa were elated, unaware of everything. By the way, you met through your mother, right? I'd love to hear more about it. As I said this, I discreetly started recording with my smartphone. You want to know? Can't help it then? Greg began talking eagerly, with Vanessa looking at him adoringly. To anyone else, it might seem like a sweet couple's story, but it was far from that. That time was really tough, huh? Yeah, but I'm happy to be with Greg now. Vanessa clung to Greg, who relaxed his expression. Honestly, it was nauseating seeing Greg dote on a younger woman. The two of them fell right into my trap, telling each other how much they loved one another. Of course, I was recording everything. This should definitely serve as solid evidence. Isn't it great to remarry someone younger? Of course, I'm truly happy every day. Right, Vanessa? Yeah, so happy. Their lovey-dovey talk lasted over an hour. It was hard to keep smiling and nodding, but the more comfortably they talked, the more advantageous it was for me. 3 hours later, we all went our separate ways. I went home and replayed the recordings. Everything was recorded clearly. I then contacted the law firm I had in mind. After a day's activities, I flopped onto my bed. Greg and Vanessa's happy faces wouldn't leave my mind. It seemed he was happier with her than when he was with me. When did he start to dislike me? Sigh. Before our marriage, I only saw the good sides of Greg, and now I was painfully aware of it. 2 weeks later, I called them to a nearby station, saying I wanted them to see the actual baby gift. They arrived about 10 minutes late, arm in arm as usual. Putting so much effort into seeing the actual gift, huh? You seemed so sad before, but you're actually celebrating for us. Yeah, so happy. Happy indeed. They were as close as ever, but their happiness would only last until this moment. Shall we go? I led them to a taxi. Our destination was the law office. Unaware of anything, they continued to flirt in the taxi, impressively unconcerned about public eyes. A few minutes later, the taxi arrived at the law office. The blissfully unaware couple followed me without any suspicion, but Greg realized something was amiss as we entered. Hey, what's this place? He shouted, but it was too late. Guided by the receptionist, They were led into a conference room. Were you tricking us? What do you mean? The two of them were yelling loudly, but the lawyer present calmed them down. Did you really think I was going to give you a baby shower gift? Thanks for coming all this way. What? As the two flustered people sat down, the lawyer explained what was happening and why I had taken such actions. Really, you're the worst. What's with this person? We're already divorced, right? We don't have anything to do with compensation. I am going to sue you for the abuses of me, especially under your cheating. You can still claim such compensation after a divorce, you know? All the lovey-dovey talk you happily shared at the cafe has been recorded and submitted, and the fact of your affair hasn't changed. You. Greg sighed deeply and leaned back in his chair, but he sat up quickly when the lawyer mentioned the amount of compensation being demanded. $15,000? That's impossible. I can't pay that either. What? Can't pay? Why don't you ask her parents? Vanessa made a displeased face at my words. I pressed further, knowing her situation. Oh, but that might be difficult. Her parents' company is about to go bankrupt, isn't it? So no funds, huh? Bankrupt? What do you mean? The company was doing well. Greg, who hadn't been informed, widened his eyes and looked at Vanessa. Realizing she couldn't escape the truth any longer, Vanessa suddenly changed her demeanor and began to talk. Ah, so it's all come out. Then no need to hide it. Yes, my parents' company is on the brink of bankruptcy. Ever since I met this old man, the business has been failing. So I thought I'd milk him for all he's worth and then leave. I never expected to get pregnant. You, calling me an old man. What? You just realized? I never wanted to marry someone like you in the first place. But since I got pregnant, I had no choice. Really, you're the worst. I can't do this anymore. I want a divorce as soon as possible. With that, Vanessa burst into high laughter. She seemed like a completely different person. Naturally, Greg was shocked by Vanessa's demeanor. So you've been thinking that about me. I'm tired of acting. Now that it's come to this, I'm leaving you. I can't stand living with an old man like you. Vanessa, the couple, who had seemed so happy up until a moment ago, broke down so easily. While I hadn't known exactly how Vanessa felt about Greg, since I orchestrated this meeting, I was satisfied with the outcome. Eventually, Greg agreed to pay the compensation in a lump sum. I worried Greg might try to escape his obligations as his payment was delayed. However, a month later, that worry was resolved when Greg called me. As soon as I answered, he pleaded, "Help me." It turned out that his affair had been discovered at his company, making it difficult for him to stay, and he chose to resign. He had spent most of his savings on Vanessa, and now, broke and divorced, he had no one to turn to. Hey, can we get back together? I don't have money for the compensation. Vanessa left me for another man, and I heard her company went bankrupt. I don't know what to do. Despite his almost tearful call, I had no intention of getting back together. Get back together? Don't make me laugh. Your problems with that woman running away or not having money are none of my concern. If you hadn't done anything strange, none of this would have happened. Just take responsibility." After I sharply responded, Greg hung up without another word. The next day, whether he borrowed money or not, the full amount I demanded was transferred into my account. I didn't hear from Greg again after that. I'm now living at home and have started working as a nursery school teacher again. Indeed, the smiles of the children are bright. The work environment is better than before, and I enjoy my job every day. Getting divorced from Greg was the right decision. I have no plans to marry again anytime soon. Just like I thought years ago, I hope to continue being a nursery teacher until retirement, taking care of my health and living well.